John Legend, you starred in NBC's live production of Jesus Christ Superstar as Jesus Christ, and you also produced the show. How did you come to be interested in tackling the show in the first place?
Well, I got a call or email from my manager who had spoken with NBC, and NBC was working with some people I already knew and had worked with before, like Neil Marin and Craig Zadan, who I had worked with during the Oscars when we performed Glory. And then I also had worked with Mark Platt before doing La La Land, and Harvey Mason Jr., who is in charge of music production. He and I had worked together on some film and TV projects before. And so between them, they thought I would be a good Jesus Christ. And they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join them for this production. And I thought it was a great team. And I thought it was a cool idea to have me play Jesus, and something different for me to do, and something different for this character. And I thought it'd be pretty cool. It's hard to turn down playing Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of stature and grandeur, in terms of acting roles, was it intimidating to think of yourself in that role in this show?
Well, I don't think it was intimidating, but it was a challenge for sure. I think I looked at it as a challenge, first of all, just to do something I hadn't done before, really, which is starring in a big musical production like this. Last time I was in a stage musical was when I was in high school, and I never had the lead role. So, and Jesus is arguably not even the lead in Jesus Christ Superstar. You could say Judas is just as much, but either way, I'd never been this heavily featured in a musical stage production before. So it was a challenge, but it was one that I thought I could tackle.
Unlike a Broadway production, for instance, which has like 8 shows a week, the preparation for this all comes down to that one performance on that one night, going out live nationwide. How long was the rehearsal process, and what was the anticipation like leading up to the moment when it's finally live?
Well, the rehearsals were kind of weird because of me. I had a 3-week Asian tour that was already scheduled for March, and the show started April 1st. Show went live April 1st. So I was gone from March 5th to March 24th. And so those were times when I would have been rehearsing with the cast, but I wasn't able to. So they moved some rehearsals ahead of the Asian tour for me. And so I did the last 2.5 weeks of February and rehearsed then, and really knew the show by then, knew the tentative stage movements before we had all the ensemble and cast in. And when I left for Asia, I was pretty much feeling good about where we were for the show. But then I came back and, we have a week to go. And not a lot had changed when it came to stage production and movement and things of that nature. But of course, we had the set there. The good thing about our original rehearsals was that the rehearsal space was actually the exact same size as the stage. And so we were able to simulate what was going on really well. It was in a church basement up in the Upper West Side. Hell's Kitchen. And so by the time we got to the actual set, it actually felt pretty close to how it felt in rehearsal, even though it was much more beautiful and grand. But the actual spacing was very similar. And then we get to, a few days before the show, and we start bringing the cameras in, which is a whole nother layer of complexity. So the cameras, the interesting thing about that is just watching how they figured out every single shot. They figured out the choreography and when they would switch to each camera, and how each camera would get out of each other's way and capture the show in the best way possible, while still preserving that live, stage feel of it. That was interesting to watch it kind of come together. It was very intricate choreography. But by then, I think all of us felt really good about our performances as individuals and as a cast, and it was just about making sure we interacted with the cameras in the right way. And then finally, we have dress rehearsal on Saturday. And that almost went without a hitch, though there was one moment for me and Mary where we were supposed to sit on that stool, on that bench at the end of What's the Buzz? And the bench had just disappeared because somebody broke the leg and during all the dancing and stuff that went before it. And so it was kind of moved off stage and we were like, oh, there's nowhere to sit. But we just kept going and stood. But nothing went like that at the show. You know, we get to the show, the crowd's there, the energy's amazing. We know it's live for the whole country, and everybody just did a great job and made sure it went off without a hitch.
Now, of course, you know, being a musician and having, you know, being on tour, you know, stranger to concerts. But you know, how is it different, you know, performing a show like this, you know, as opposed to performing your own show with your own music?
Well, I think just the added layer of just learning everything as opposed to knowing everything and having written everything before. I think that adds a big layer of complexity to it and challenge to it. And then it's different to perform in character versus performing as yourself. And I think that's just more of a kind of a mental challenge of trying to find where you can get into character, feel the emotion that the character is feeling, be present and react to what's happening with your other castmates on stage. I think that's a different layer of complexity and a challenge, especially for someone like me who hasn't really done a lot of acting in my career. And then in some ways it's easier because on my shows, I have, you know, almost 2 hours straight of me singing everything pretty much. Even though I have a band and backup singers, I don't, you know, take songs off. I don't have other people taking lead voices in the songs. I don't lip sync. So, you know, it's a big challenge to do 2 hours of performing every night or every other night on tour. And in some ways, doing this show with only, you know, like 4 or 5 big songs for me and lots of breaks and commercial breaks and other people are singing breaks. In that sense, it was easier than doing my own show.
Jesus Christ Superstar is has that memorable score with you know, a number of well-known songs. Was there one in particular that was a favorite of yours to you know, perform, or that you were looking forward to the most, or that you were the proudest of when it came out?
Well, of course, Gethsemane is the biggest song for Jesus, and that's the one you want to be able to nail because the emotion is so intense and the vocal part is so intense. And so that's the one I've kind of like, that was the you know, the most important thing for me to get right. But I think when it comes to actual enjoyment, I love some other songs too. I loved Poor Jerusalem a lot. It's very kind of quiet and mournful and a little bit sad. I like some of those quiet moments in the show too.
The show, you know, late in the production, leading up to the crucifixion, those scenes get, you know, fairly intense emotionally. The 39 lashes scene. How did you prepare emotionally for those heavier portions, you know, as the show is going on?
Well, I mean, I think just thinking about the actual physical pain that he might have gone through, I think was the most important thing for me, and to really convey some anguish and agony and suffering, because crucifixion was an extremely excruciating way to die. You know, the way we execute people now is much more humane than it was back then. They wanted to make it a spectacle of torture. And so, you know, as much as you can, you want to try to get into that feeling, even though you can't duplicate exactly what he went through.
The crucifixion itself is this really bold moment where you're raised high in midair, and the set behind you opens up. And you know, was that nerve-wracking, not just emotionally, but logistically? You know, you're being hoisted up into midair like that?
Well, we went through a lot of kind of timing shifts because we were trying to get the exact right moment, you know, as Jesus Christ Superstar is ending. And we wanted to lift the cross at the exact right moment and for it to kind of go back into the light at the exact right moment. And we changed that moment like several times in the last few days, just trying to get it exactly right. But it was more of a challenge for the tech folks and the crew than it was for me, because I'm just up there. Once they get me up there, I'm there. And my lines fall at a certain point in the music and all those things. So that stayed the same. But a lot of the movements of the cross changed in the last few days as we were trying to get it exactly right. So we figured it out and it worked. I mean, I think it was a really powerful, beautiful moment. Me going back into the light in the cross, I think stood out for a lot of people as one of the signature moments of the show. And I can't take any credit for it. I just think it was a great design by the team of making it look so beautiful and so ethereal.
Now, you mentioned you haven't done that much acting in your career, but you now appeared in this, and you worked in La La Land. And do you think you'd ever be interested in performing a Broadway musical at some point now that you've had this experience under your belt?
I do. I think I'd be interested. I think one way for me to be excited about it would be maybe to write the music myself in something original. About something I'm excited to write about. So I don't know what that'll be. But, I'm open to that possibility. I'm also open to starring in something that already exists, but, obviously it had to be the right material and it had to fit my voice and be something I'd be excited to do. So I don't know what that is yet.
You worked in this with Sarah Bareilles, who is in Waitress, in addition to her own recording career. Brandon Victor Dixon is a theater veteran. What was it like working with those co-stars who have done theatrical work before?
I think it made me feel good. It made me feel like I knew that everybody around me was going to be awesome, and that all I had to do was do my part. But I knew everybody else around me were pros, and they would, sound great, look great. They had the experience to carry everything off. And so I think it's better to be in a situation where everybody around you is awesome than to feel like you're clearly the best one there. Like I was happy that it wasn't clear that I was the best one there and that everyone there was amazing.
Now, you have worked in Broadway in one respect as a producer. You won a Tony last year for the revival of Jitney by August Wilson. What made you interested in producing for the theater and in that show in particular?
Well, I love August Wilson. I've loved his work for a long time. We've been involved with producing a lot of film and TV. I have a company called Get Lifted Film Company. And we felt like it was a natural extension to get involved in some theater as well. The first thing we did was the Dick Gregory one-man show starring Joe Morton. It's called Turn Me Loose. And I was always a big fan of Dick Gregory and all the interesting work he's done as an activist and as a comedian. And, the message of that show was really resonant for me, thinking about the artist as an activist and what that means. And so that was a natural fit for me. And then once we started working in the theater, we were able to make some more relationships. And this Jitney opportunity came to our attention. And it was the last August Wilson show that had not actually been on Broadway. And so the opportunity to help that be seen was an exciting opportunity for me. What I love about August Wilson is I'm from Ohio, which is right next to Pittsburgh. And so when I see the characters that he features in his shows, I really recognize a lot of them. Culturally, they connect to my father and my uncles and my grandfather and other people that I grew up around. And so I always felt a connection to the way he wrote about those characters and made their lives seem worthy of a Broadway show, even though they were just regular blue-collar folks trying to get by.
Now, that Tony Award, in addition to the Grammys you've won and the Oscar you won for Glory, that means you're just an Emmy away from that rare EGOT achievement. And you could win as a producer and an actor in Jesus Christ Superstar. What do you think about that possibility?
Well, it's exciting. I'm excited that we put on a show that people are talking about in those terms. And I'm excited for the possibility of being in that rare group of people who have won all four of those awards. I mean, I said before the show, people kind of started hinting to me about it and asking me about it before. And I said, you can't go into it thinking I want to get an award for this. You have to go into it thinking I want this to be the best production we can possibly make it. And then the awards will come. They don't always come when you think you might have done the best work, but if you do the best work, then your chances are better of getting an award. And so I feel like we did the best we could do. And I don't know who the competition for the awards will be, but we did work that we're really proud of.
Now, interestingly, you won that Oscar with Common, who won an Emmy last year, so he just needs a Tony. So,
Yes,
you need to get that Emmy before he gets that Tony.
We're not in a race. I think he'll probably get a Tony before it's all said and done, and then hopefully at some point we'll both make it to that rarefied space.
Well, I want to congratulate you on Jesus Christ Superstar, and thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.